So through this demonstration, you're going to learn how to take a photo that's like this and create something a little more like this. So again, from here to here, and we use several layers of curves and a couple hue and saturation. So let's go ahead and get started. So before we start editing our photos, we need to think about what makes a good photo. And if you think about it, our eyes are drawn to light, contrast, and color. This photo here is an excellent example of the way that the light touches our subject, that we have some nice contrast and we have some nice colors, and all of this draws our eyes to our subject. So our goal is going to be that we are going to lighten up the subject and we're going to darken non-subject areas. So basically we're doing 2 steps for each one of these. We're going to add contrast and details to the subject. We're going to remove that from the non-subject. And we're going to add color to our subject. We're going to remove the color from our non-subject. So before we do that, though, we do have to correct our file. So these are just some steps you go through before we do the formula. We're going to crop and level our horizon, or just level out your photo. Maybe it is crooked. Color correction, which is your image menu adjustments, and then hue and saturation. Dust removal, this is to take away dust that might be on your lens, and then finally a curves adjustment layer to add some light to our original image. But once we do all that, once we do the beginning things, then we're going to start editing in this order. We're going to edit with light and then contrast, and we're going to end with editing our color again. Okay, let's go ahead and bring in my image. This is a photo I took in my local area not very long ago, actually. And so I think what I'm going to do is my goal is to sort of focus on this area and this tree as my focus, my subject, and these streams coming through here, we're going to really focus on that. We're also going to have to darken the sky a little bit there. It's a little oversaturated with color. So as promised, we're going to first make sure our image is nice and straight. So conceivably you would find something that you would think is flat. Water is a good thing to look for. I don't have exactly flat water in here. So I'm going to look at this region here, and I'm going to bring my ruler down. Now if you don't see a ruler up here, you're going to go to View and Rulers, and that would be your rulers. I already have my ruler there. So before I do anything, I'm going to make a copy of my background layer. I'm going to make it see-through and lock it and just forget it's there. So now with this layer here, I'm going to go ahead and crop it. But first I'm going to bring my ruler down. I just drag it down and I look at what I think should be flat. And to me, these hills back here should be flat. And if I zoom in, you'll see it's not quite flat. So I am going to fix that. So to do that, I'm going to go to Edit, and then Free Transform. And now I can transform this image, including turning it so that it does meet the horizon. And there we go. It's now nice and straight on my line. Of course, I can still move this line. Well, first I have to finish transforming. But so this is what I want for my picture. However, I do want to actually crop some stuff out of my picture. I'm picturing this as being, oops, sorry. Okay, so I now have my image, and I just want to transform it. I'm sorry. Okay, and so next I'm going to go ahead and crop my image. Now when I crop, we want to make sure this delete cropped pixels is not checked. So I'm going to go ahead and drag some of these babies up. At first I wanted this grass in front, but I don't want that to be my focus. In fact, I actually don't want that grass there at all. I really want my focus to be like this sunny little meadow area here, and I want just the one tree, and I want it kind of on my rule of thirds there, and maybe a little more, maybe a little bit of sky. And then I'm just going to pull in so I don't get that cropped edge there. Okay, that looks good. Now I'm going to crop it by clicking the check mark. Okay, I've cropped my image, and next I'm going to do a bit of color correction using a hue and saturation image adjustment. So image, adjustments, hue and saturation. And here I can just sort of move these over. You should not mess with lightness. We're going to do several things to lighten this up, so don't worry about that. But saturation, let's just see what it gets like when it's massive. All right. And that's basically black and white. And then with hue, reset that. With hue, again, weird color changes and more weird color changes. Reset that. So I think I'm going to just bring my hue up, well, barely, and my saturation barely. That adds a little more color to my image. And if you want to see what it looks like, there we go. That does look quite nice. All right, already looking nicer, so I'm going to stick with that and press OK. Next, if you did have dust removal, first of all, let's get rid of this guide. So that guide is under View, Clear Guides. So next, if you had some dust removal to remove from your lens, I don't think I really have any, but I guess let's pretend I did. I'll remove a cloud. We'll pretend that it is a piece of dust, okay? So to do that, I'm going to add, a new layer, and then I'm going to, on that layer, click on the spot healing brush, and that is the Band-Aid spot healing brush. Now the interesting thing about that is basically what it does is it's going to detect what is around my circle, and it's going to replace what is in my circle with what is around my circle. So let me zoom in on that. And I'm going to go back over to my spot healing. Notice that it's a circle, it's a brush healing. If you want to make that circle bigger or smaller, use the brackets that are over your Enter key. The left and the right bracket will make your image bigger and smaller. However, right now, if I click on this, nothing is going to happen. Watch. Nothing happened, even though it says I use the spot healing brush. And that's because I'm on the second layer, and I need it to see what is on this layer, but I don't want to edit my image permanently. I don't want to delete that cloud permanently, just in case, whatever. So I'm going to grab on this layer. I'm going to change it from my source being the current layer to the current one and the one below it. So now what's going to happen is when I click on this spot healing brush, there it goes. So basically it looked at all of the blue around it. So just so you can see it, I'm going to make my eyeball go in and out. So there's my cloud. It disappeared pretty well. I actually don't want to do that, so I'm going to delete this layer, but that is how you would delete any dust off of your image. Next, we're just going to add a little bit of like automatic light to this photo, sort of like getting the computer to do our hard work for us. So to do that, we're going to go to, we're going to add an adjustment layer to this. So down here, oops, with the cookie here, we're going to grab our cookie and we're going to add in a curves adjustment layer. So just to give you an idea of the overall workflow, basically we're going to lighten up the subject and darken the non-subject areas. So that's going to happen in 4 steps. We're going to first lighten the subject with a curves adjustment layer. We're going to lighten the whole canvas, then darken the whole canvas. Then we're going to brush sunlight onto various areas that look like they need sunlight, and we're going to brush shadows onto various areas that look like they need shadows. And then we're going to have another curves adjustment layer. We're going to bring each contrast dot in 25%, and that is going to add in some contrast. And then we're going to bring in a couple more layers, a hue and saturation layer to remove color from the non-subject areas, then a hue and saturation adjustment layer to add color to the subject, and then finally a vibrance adjustment layer to add overall vibrance. I added that on. And so that is the basic formula that we're going to follow here. And now we're just going to click on Auto. Now let's see how it made a difference, if at all. So here's our curves adjustment layer with the auto on and the auto off. I don't see too much of a change in mine. Yep, it did not need much correction. So, but yours might, and if you like the correction, you can leave it as is. We're going to mess with curves a lot more. Okay, so now as promised, we are going to start messing with our light versus dark versus contrast and not. So we're going to start with lighting up our subject. And I told you before, I can picture my subject being lightened here and on the side of this tree, and maybe these sunbeams coming down through. So I know that I still don't have a ton of color in this image. I'm not terribly worried because color is going to be our final step. So let me go ahead and we're going to add another adjustment layer. And again, it's going to be a curves adjustment layer. So this time what we're going to do is we're going to move the center dot. We're going to place the dot in the center. We're going to move it up and to the left. Now we're looking for that subject area that we really wanted to lighten up right there. Now just to see how that looks different, and it might look different in a way that you don't like, but you're really looking, because we're only going to address part of the image. So I can turn it off and on, off and on. I really like it up here. So it looks like we got some nice amount of light. So what we're going to do now is we're going to accentuate parts of this image, but not the whole thing. We're going to lighten up many things, but we're going to keep some things less light. Let's do that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to invert this layer. To do that, it's Control or Command I, and you'll see that it basically disappeared. I can turn the eyeball off and on and nothing changes. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our brush tool to brush in what we the highlights we just had. Now in order for this to work, a couple things have to change. First of all, we have to make sure that this white is on top. If you have any colors other than white and black, then click on the tiny white and black squares there. Mine are already white and black. And if your white is not on top, then click on the little arrows and that will put the white on top. So next we're going to make our brush a little bit bigger. Again, you can use your bracket keys to make your brush bigger or smaller. And then next I'm going to mess with my flow and my opacity. So it was explained to me recently how flow works, and I'm going to change my flow to 5%. And you'll notice that when I start erasing, and I am really erasing because I'm putting the white on top of the black is basically hiding the light curves, and now I'm going to reveal the light curves with this brush. So I'm just going to use the brush to lighten up some areas. I want this lit up. I definitely want my sky lit up. So I'm just going through these sunbeams, and you'll see how this looks in a minute. And then I'm also going to come in kind of close. And I want to get my tree here as well. And I'll get some of these areas. So basically with using the flow at 5%, think of it as a marker that you keep getting to go over the same spot with. And what flow does is it makes it a little more realistic for that to take place. So I'm just going over this with my 5% flow and just lightening up the spots that I think would look nice if they were lighter. So if I come over to this black rectangle and I click on Alt and I click the rectangle, you can sort of see where my markings went. So right now I really like this to see the difference. Here it was before and here is after. Before, after, before, after. And I think I actually want to brighten up a little more over here. So again, to get an idea of what this looks like, this is what I've just been doing. Now let's say you made something light that you don't want to make light. So let's say I'm like, oh, I'm going to lighten up this cloud, which I don't want to, because I don't want my attention to go to that cloud. So here's my cloud before, after, before, after. And let's say I didn't like what I did to that cloud. Well, if I just reverse this so the black is on top, I can now go back over that, and that is going to put the darkness back in. So it'll take away, it's really taking away the light color that I put in there. So again, I'm just going to keep going over it. If you're wondering how I know there's more left, I can kind of see it over here, but I can always go like that to really get an idea of, oops, of what it looks like. So I'm going to, again, throw that over there. Okay, next we're going to mess with darkness, and we're going to again add another curves layer. This time for our curves, you can either drag down from the right. We're looking to make our dark areas darker, or you can put your dot in the middle and drag that down and to the right a bit. They both do just about the same thing. I think I'm going to put this here. Now, if I make it go away, it looks like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to darken the areas that we think should be dark, and we're going to do that by inverting this mask again. So that's Control or Command I, Again, for this to work, if we start coloring right now, nothing is going to happen. In fact, I'll even put some stuff right here. And the reason why nothing is happening is because we have black on top still. We need to reverse it so that white is on top. Now we're going to brush in our darkness. You know, on this level I decided that I want to have a little more light on this ridge. So the same way is going to work. I can still go back in time and do this. I just made my brush nice and small. I'm going to go along this ridge and lighten this up a little bit as well. Remember, if I ever feel like I made a mistake, I can always switch, use black, and that sort of takes away the lightness on that level. So again, if you want to see this, press Alt or Option, and you can see what sort of changes. I just made those ones there. And here, Alt or Option, you can sort of see where I went there. Okay, so we have now made our, well, this is our light. This is our shadows. Speaking of, I want one more shadow in here. I need it to be coloring with white. I want my actual shadow to be a shadow. I think I want more of this tree to be light as well. So this is what our non-light, this is light. That looks nice. I think I want, there, that looks nice. Okay, so next we're going to, so we have now lightened our subject, darkened our non-subject. Now we're going to even lighten this a little further. We're going to look at the areas where our sunlight hits, and then we're going to lighten it up even more. We're going to call this layer sunlight. So we're going to do another curves layer, up and to the left. And again, to see it without the curve there it is. So we're going to invert this again, Control or Command I. And now we're going to brush in our sunlight areas. So let me make sure I have my white brush. I do. Make my brush a bit smaller, and I'm going to again address these areas with white and add some sunlight in here. Okay, so now this one has been our sunlight. And again, to see what this looks like, if I click it on and off, you'll see that the sun just accentuates these various things that we want accentuated with the sun. And next, shadows. So let's go ahead and again do another curves adjustment layer, and we're going to again accentuate these shadows. So I'm going to add another curves adjustment layer. This one is again going to be shadows down and to the right. And again, we're going to see what it looks like. Invert it, Control or Command I, and let's start painting on our shadows. So again, I kind of want all of this to be shadowed. And then of course, this little bad boy down here, I want that to be shadowed. And then a little bit bigger, and I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to accentuate these darkened areas with more shadow. And just to regularly get some inspo, let's just see how this looks. Alright, I see how it's happening. It's turning out pretty nice actually. So again, it just adds more contrast to the picture. It adds more interest, so that way our eyes enjoy it more. So I'm just brushing in shadows. Maybe a little bit of shadow near the bottom of the tree line here. And if you go over it several times, it just makes it quote unquote like darker. You're just putting in more of a shadow. So again, if I press Alt or Option and then click here, you'll see where I have put in my shadows. So I'm going to continue with this a bit. Okay, so here are my shadows. I think I want a little more. Really want to darken up this area that is of no concern to me. I really want to darken up this sky. I mean, there's other ways to do this sky, but this will do for now. Okay, and so this is going to be shadows again. I probably should call this one darkness. So next we're going to add another adjustment layer. It's again going to be a curves adjustment layer. And what we're doing is we're looking for some contrast. So let's bring this dot here in about 25%. So hang on, let me reset this. And then bring this one down as well. So let's see it again. So let's go ahead and invert it. don't know if I'm going to do much with this one here because I don't like the sky that it put there. Let's just see what happens when I brush over my land here. I like this area here. Just see what it looks like. Oh yeah, it does look nice. So there's it off, and there's it on. It just adds a little more depth. That looks quite nice actually. Okay, so this one here is for our contrast. And now we're going to go ahead and mess with our colors. So we're going to add a hue and saturation adjustment layer. And let's see what we can do with our color here. So here we have, it's taken away almost all the color. However, maybe there are areas of my image that I do want the color kind of removed from. Let's just see how this works. So Control I. And let's remove some color from these areas that I don't really want people's attention. So remember, we only have a 5% flow, so it's not going to be a dramatic change. I also want a bigger brush. So it's just taking some color out of the areas that are of very little interest. I'm not seeing a ton of difference, but I do know that there is a difference because if I click my Alt or Option key and click here, you'll see that I am taking away color here. And I just don't want to take away much color because I really like the way all of this looks. So I'm kind of not that interested in taking away a ton of color. I'm very interested in adding some color to this. Let's go ahead and add color. So a new hue and saturation. I actually like vibrance, but let's go ahead to hue and saturation. Add our saturation up a bit. That's going to make our greens greener, our oranges oranger. Control or Command I. So let's see what this looks like. So I'm going to, I have a nice size brush here. And I'm going to really color in quite a bit of this because I want some nice colors up here. And that is a finished product. So my original image looked like this, and my new image looks like that. From this to that. So if you are satisfied with what you have and you don't want to return to your project later, you can go ahead and file export as a JPEG. If you plan to return and work more, you can save it as a Photoshop file. I'm going to export as a JPEG. If you plan to print your JPEG, it should be 100% quality. I do not plan to print mine, so I'm going to leave it at 70, and I can go ahead and click on Save. And there's my file, all done. I actually added one more step, which is a vibrance layer. Here's the adding of an adjustment layer, and I added a vibrance layer just to show you how different it looks. So there's my vibrance layer gone, and there it's back. So I really love the difference. I just feel like the color is just more fantasy, which is kind of what I was looking for. So there we go. One more step, which is a vibrance layer. And to see what that looks like, here are the controllers. I brought my vibrance all the way up to 90. And again, this is what it looked like prior, and now there.